have to go ahead and introduce yourself.
I will.
I'm good. Part of the seat is right
Part of the
here.
seat. My name is Resnikoff. I'm one of the partners in Noble Pond Company LLC. For those of you who don't know the history, the town put out an RFP about 2.5 years ago looking for a developer for the existing Morgan site school. We applied for it, went through a whole rigorous process of getting chosen, got chosen. And we've been working with the staff and the different commissions in town to move our plan along. Last week, we made our first formal first formal application to the Wetlands Commission. We've been before Conservation. We're going to design review Wednesday night. And we wanted to come in tonight because we had been coming to planning and zoning all along, just to give you an overview. So this is not an application tonight. It's really just to inform you where we are, what we're thinking about, and certainly if there's feedback, happy to hear it, because we're still tweaking little things on this thing. Yeah, okay. This projector takes a second to warm up. Hopefully it's still where it should be. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the Morgan School site. The site is 35 acres. And the actual boundary goes way out here, which is all town-owned land. Of the 35 acres, 13.5 acres approximately will be given to either the Clinton Land Trust or by a deed of easement or a deed that's up for discussion. I've already spoken with the Clinton Land Trust, and they're just waiting to figure out what they want to do. I have to talk to Conservation, obviously, get their input. So what we're doing, just to orient yourselves, obviously this is Clinton Crossings. This is where little Dunkin' Donuts. This is where the Dunkin' Donuts is. This is where the exit from 95 comes from if you're going southbound. There's an existing light there. There's an existing light here. Let me start with the general layout. I'll get to the lights in a second. So what we're proposing is a village kind of atmosphere, and you'll see that momentarily in the renderings. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4 freestanding restaurants, and then we're anticipating 2 more restaurants in line. You can see the view quarters of the pedestrian ways going back and through. Here there's an amphitheater, which again I'll show you some pictures of in a moment, which will be for public use. This building, and this building are all 1-story retail. This is a 5-story flag hotel. These are first floor retail with 3 floors of residential. And this building is all residential. This plan's evolved greatly from the original plan, which had much more housing on it, a lot of freestanding housing, meaning townhouses, but the feedback from the previous commission was they didn't want that. This area is the DEEP area where we have to put the subsurface septic in. That process has started. It takes about 9 months to get approvals for that. Just to give you a sense of what's already there and what we're planning to do, all of the area in gray is already developed. That's all the school area. Here's the ball fields are developed. There's another ball field down here. So the only areas we're really adding that aren't currently developed are these areas in here. The rest of it's actually already got building on it. Under our terms and conditions with the town, we get physical possession of the school October 1st, unless the school gets emptied out sooner, but that's about when Mike Posey thinks it will happen. And obviously the first thing we have to do is remediation before we can raise the building. And there's a lot of remediation. I'll talk about that in a second. This gives you a better idea. I'm just going to drop this down so you can see the whole thing. This gives you an idea of the extent of the part that's all going to conservation. Some of it's wetland, some of it's mill pond. It won't change anything for any of the neighbors. Any neighbor on Glenwood who comes up to Mill Pond now will still have the same use of it. There's no restrictions on it. It's just that because it's wetlands and open space, we figured the town would be happier with it with a deed of easement or a straight fee deed. That's what's typically done. The amphitheater is literally 3 or 4 layers like this of just green, where people can gather together for public events, bands, concerts, kids to play. It's just an area to play. This is an existing one from another town. This is another shot of it, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. It's just slightly tiered. There's a little stage with it on this one, which we are also proposing. It's about 300 square feet, so you have some electricity if you have a band that can plug in an amplifier or something like that. Architecturally, and you are actually going to be the first ones to see this, design committee has not seen any of this yet, is a village look. So this is looking up one of the pedestrian ways towards one of the first floor retail with apartments over it. This is 1-story retail, this is 1-story retail. And these are just various views of the same thing over and over, and I can come back if anybody wants to see a different view of it. What we've done is, if you're not familiar with it, when the IDZ zone was adopted, it had very specific architectural guidelines. So we had complied through all of this to try to get the guidelines met. So for example, these corners, we envision restaurants because you have areas that can create patios, outside dining, sitting on the walkway, benches, bikeways, things like that. It's very pedestrian friendly. Again, that's just another view of it. And just to give you this is a rendered view of it, just to give you a sense of it. So these are the same buildings. None of them are terribly tall. We're allowed under the code to go up to 75 feet. The only building that will be that tall will be the hotel. All the others are in the 50-foot range, 35-foot range. What's misleading is, and I'll use this building as an example, this is a 1-story retail building. The actual retail is only 22 feet tall. That's no taller than Cookie Crossings. But we've added architectural elements that vary the roof line 35 to 40, 43 feet like that, by using different architectural elements to just give a look on it. I'm just going to put the main site plan back up so you can just see it again.
So they're just parapets?
They're actual, well, they're more than parapets. They're actually fully built towers and.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're not just facades. We are still going through due diligence at this point. We've had to do asbestos remediation studies, all sorts of studies out in the field to meet DEP standards for water quality. We've had to do water level studies. We've had to do, there are 3 or 4 old septic systems out here. We've had to study all of those, and we still have to study them some more. There are other studies in the building we can't go through. It's empty because the kids are still inside. So we've been doing a tremendous amount of experts coming on site with permission. Everything's done through Mike Cozy and Jack Cross. This area has underground parking. Most of you know, as you drive in here, there's a natural bowl to your left. So we're taking advantage of that to put 152 spaces underneath this deck. And that will be mostly employee parking, just to give them a place they can go. Parking is distributed throughout the whole center rather than a big field of parking like you have the Clinton Crossings in front and then the buildings. And the parking is set up so that it's convenient for each of the uses. And when we have to come in and supply, one of the requirements we have to give you is a parking study that explains and shows you in depth how all that works. We've already had unofficial discussions with DOT. Our intention is to close this light for an entrance into the site. If you go to the site now, you can use that light to get in and out of the site if you're familiar with it. It will be left operative to work for the library, but you won't be able to come into our site. What we're planning to do is add another face to the existing light and put the crossings here, so that we'll have two entrances, one here and one here. Some of the other requirements under the IDP zone have to do with amenities. The site is loaded with all sorts of open space, green space, view corridors, bike paths. We originally showed walking paths all along here. Our wetlands expert, Rich Starsky, who many of you probably know, asked us if we take them out. The Wetlands Commission is considering whether we can put them back in, and the discussion will be, if we can, what they'll be made out of. We sort of like the idea of having a walking path that went along here, but we'll go with whatever the commission wants us to do. And I'm reminding you of that because some of you saw the earlier version with a walking path on it. And the final point I'd make, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions, we'd be requesting a pylon here and a pylon here, and we were talking about regulations before. Your signage regulations aren't finished, so we don't know how to design to it yet. So that is one request we have of the commission for feedback. The second question we have, and again, we're not asking for an answer tonight, we're meeting all of the intended architectural design elements that we require. There are a few of our tenants, the hotel in particular, and a couple of the restaurants who want to, quote, use their national architecture. That's a very difficult discussion because they want their identity. And we're not sure how to mail their request and the design elements. They're willing to incorporate some of the elements in, but they also want their look. And that's a question we're going to have to ask the commission to give us direction on and give to our tenants. Sooner than later, because people are in the middle of negotiating and trying to finalize leasing deals for this, that they need to know that it's a cost factor. That's the end of just this informal presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions. We can turn the light on, but leave this up. I think it will sit up there so you can see it. There it is. Oh, my last comment was, our goal is to formally file with your commission for your February meeting.
I'm sorry?
Our goal is to formally file our application for the February meeting. We are still tweaking away. I'm sorry? I just asked about sign. Yeah. That's the one thing we don't have, is there's not an in-force signage regulation that.
So what do we need to do with signage?
There were regulations that were proposed and put on hold.
Okay.
So we have them. We just need to proceed.
Why did we put them on hold? Because we were going through a change?
Pretty much. So pretty much now we
Can you tell us what type of, could you give us the names of some of the, no?
No, actually, I can give you a general idea, but when you negotiate with these kinds of tenants, and let me talk about that for 1 second. We're proposing a 5-story flag hotel. We're proposing about 100,000 feet of retail, about 25,000 foot of restaurant, and approximately 135 to 150 units of market rental apartments, 1 and 2 bedroom. Most of the tenants, and we are working both local tenants, and there are not a lot of local tenants, unfortunately, regional tenants and national tenants, they all make you sign confidentiality agreements. And I have signed these my whole life bluntly, and I believe in them because I ask people to sign them for me. So I'm not trying to be coy.
No, I understand. I was just trying to envision like like a TGIFs there?
We're
or-
talking to every price point you can imagine. Our goal is to have in the food range, for example, our goal is, there's no fast food allowed.
Right,
But our goal is to have various price points from fine dining
right,
to, let's just say, a nationally known coffee shop.
right, yeah,
Not to mention, I don't think it's proper for us, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, to be even questioning what or who the tenant is.
no, Gary, my question was, when he said that the tenants wanted to keep their original architecture, I was trying to envision what a TGIFs would look
He's
like
only
over
talking
there.
about the hotel.
No, it's just a hotel and two of the restaurants, so the only ones that have access
Yeah,
to that.
it was just the restaurant, so I was just trying to envision, you know.
Yeah, it's
how that fit.
literally this hotel and this restaurant have asked that they can have their more prototypical look.
So,
My answer to them is that we really don't know, because it doesn't match. I mean, if we go through with this project, we're going to be spending millions and millions of dollars to have a very good looking place. We don't want to have a contrasting building. So what we're trying to work out with them is to get them to incorporate some of the elements into their designs. Working with national chains, if you've ever done it with their architecture departments, is you might as well hit your head against a brick wall. I hope none of you are national architecture chains. The problem is they have hundreds of deals, they have a cookie cutter, they don't want to change. And the moment you go one off, they say, don't want to do that. So it's a real issue for them.
Can you tell us how many commitments you have for tenants?
Right now, I would tell you we're in the midst of negotiating about 15 what are called letters of intent. And from letters of intent, then you go to the final lease. The process is, and it's a very odd process, part of our problem is that we haven't really been able to pull the trigger till now because of timing. But what we're aiming for is for everybody to be either late 2017, if we're really lucky, but more than likely 2018. So the capital commitments for these tenants go into effect around July 1 of this year for 2018. So that's why we're suddenly under pressure to get it done. So how most of them work is you get through the letter of intent, and the letter of intent is almost the lease. And then you go to the lease. But they have to go through their operations committee, their finance committee. It's worse than getting permits in town, believe me.
That's going to be an easy
So Julie, on the signs,
Yes.
where exactly was it in the process? We didn't hold a public hearing.
No. It was, the committee saw it, it was brought before the commission for some questions, and then it was tabled.
I believe both Heller and Sage and I commented.
Oh, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion that the applicant already has signs that he'd like to see on the site, that perhaps those renderings are provided to the consultant planner and see
Oh,
whether
sure.
they're incorporated
We have
into...
to.
I believe that I think we took what you, because I had talked to you before.
I mean, I can send, we have more refined now, so we can send more refined.
That
Yeah, we were-
works, but we don't
going back
actually
and
have a
forth,
sign
so-
regulation, so
Yeah, we have been going back and forth to get the input.
can we
Make sure
get
it's working.
that put on what would we have to do to get that put on the agenda for public hearing? And are we ready to put it up for public hearing?
It probably needs to go to the February meeting for the commission to look at again. And I can distribute it for the February meeting.
Doesn't really help you, right?
We're making some guesses and we'll have to adjust those.
I can give you,
You can give them a copy, though.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with what's been written, and we're sort of, what we did is we designed to that. But it's not law.
Right,
Right,
so let's
that's
do
the
that,
fastest
let's
we
put it
can
on
do
the
that.
February agenda,
I can send it out for referrals.
send
and
it
all
out for
that.
comments.
Yep.
In terms of the design, though, I think, you have a vision for what this should look like, and you should probably have the signage speak to the same vernacular as the rest of the design. So even if we've worked on signage, if you ultimately feel as though it's not the exact direction, maybe...
There's
Yeah,
time.
we can, I can work with staff on that.
Do you see anything restrictive in what you read?
No,
Is it
the
compatible?
sign regulations, I think, we actually use those to put the sign that uses so on here, so I think that, but I would like to just make sure there's no tweaks now. One of the things that did change from when those were drawn is we've added more architectural elements, so the signage height and size on the buildings need a little tweaking, that kind of thing.
It's not totally
yeah.
restrictive, so you
Yeah.
can work within those guidelines.
The other thing we'd like to do is distribute this plan and some of the building plans to the fire department, the fire marshal, start to get feedback to where they want hydrants, things like that. We're already working with Connecticut Water, with the utility companies to make sure we're getting stuff where they want it. So we have as complete a package as possible.
Are you going to design review board on Wednesday?
On Wednesday,
Because I didn't get an application.
you did. I sent it in last week.
Good.
Yeah. We send it in the morning.
She sent it to me in the morning.
Okay.
I don't remember getting it.
And you'll circulate
Oh.
Just briefly, Henry, can you tell me why Resnikoff didn't want the walking trail?
Sure. If you look carefully, it's very hard to see, at least from what I'm seeing, there's a dotted dashed line along here. That's the 100-foot review line. We're not touching any wetlands. We're not going into the wetlands. We're not filling any wetlands. And in fact, the site sits above the wetlands physically. If you've ever been out there, if you, actually you can see it better on this one. If you go down to this corner, there's a retaining wall there, and you can actually, there's some mafia blocks and things like that, and a fence. You can actually look down before you get to the wetlands. So we're not going anywhere beyond that. The only reason Rich didn't want the walking paths along here is that he felt that these were sort of prime areas that have never been developed before. So he was trying to get us to minimize what we were doing in the regulated area. That was all.
And it seems like there's become some very low impact
We thought so, but,
sonotubes and a boardwalk. or something.
well, actually, we even said to Rich, we could do like a hiking trail, like they do
Stone House.
Stone Dust or even a plain earth. I've been working with Rich since, what, 1977, and the thing I know about Rich is that he's very reasonable. He gave us a lot of good information about what to plant and all of the slopes along here. All of them are native plantings. He's very, but I also listen to Rich. I mean, I've learned over the years he's done a lot of projects for me. And if he says that, he won't really come out and tell you exactly why, but you sort of listen to him. But the commission, it's a trade because actually one of your amenities in your regulations asks for walking paths. And while we have internal walking paths all through here, we just thought it was a nice feature.
Especially with that type of residential, that's not
Yeah.
really become a residential
And
neighborhood.
so we asked the Wetland Commission when they go for their site walk, which is the 23rd of January, to please keep that in mind. And Rich will be with them, and Michelle Carlson, who's our engineer, and maybe we can do sections of them. I mean, maybe there's a compromise, because we just thought it was a nice amendment. We're not trying not to do them. We're just trying to be respectful of what Rich's opinion is.
One thing
I'm
that
on wetlands, and
Right.
we discussed that.
Yeah,
One of the problems they had was meeting the ADA requirements.
that was Rich's concern.
Right, and I've done some trails for the state of Connecticut, and they basically use asphalt and stone dust along the edges, as I said at the meeting. I noticed over at Hammonasset, they just put gravel down and put boulders along the side so you trip on them.
Right.
The Army Corps engineers and DEP will all come up with that practical approach of using asphalt with stone dust so that it blends into the environment. One of the other things that I was going to mention to the chairman is that I'm also on water pollution control, and I don't know, no one has really addressed this project with water pollution control and how it impacts the sewage going forward, the use of water mains to alleviate the necessity of sewage areas where they have wells. So, and I'm not, this is my first time planning and zoning, and I think we need to actually be one of our mandates should be that we get together with the water pollution control to make sure that when we're planning ahead, we don't just spin our wheels. For example, we did the whole center of town, right, with sidewalks and so on and so forth. And when we go to put the sewers in, we gotta rip it all up. Plus, we just spent $3 million on bonding on roads through the town of Clinton, which we're gonna also have to remove, dig up, because we gotta put the piping in the infrastructure.
Let me address that. 'cause we
And
actually-
the other one thing is supposedly this water main that's going to be brought over from, I guess, over towards Liberty Street back across into this project. And we're thinking about taking that and extending it so we can feed Rocky Ledge, to eliminate the need to sewer Rocky Ledge. So I think what I'm trying to say is I think we need to get involved with the DPW, which I'm a member of, water pollution control, which I'm a member of, and obviously here,
Let me ask you this question, Eric.
and wetlands.
Who's really the point person here? So certainly all those agencies get a notification about, I'm assuming, about the project. Is it planning and zoning that's the point group that would then invite
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
water pollution control?
there's going to be overlapping jurisdictions on certain things. Like, for instance, you've already heard Mr. Resnikoff discussing he has to go to DEEP for the sewage. DEEP doesn't really care what we do. DEEP should do its own thing. We can condition it on DEEP approval, but we can't force them to meet our terms. On the other hand, water pollution control is more advisory. It sort of gives this commission reports or advice or whatever else. It doesn't dictate to this commission. This commission is going to be the regulatory body that the town of Clinton uses to approve this project. And all the other regulatory bodies are going to come through this body. Doesn't mean it's not going to have a separate review by the building official, by the fire official, by the, all these other officials giving reports in, but those reports should be filtered through this commission, so this commission can adopt them as part of its approval.
Yeah, but one of the problems is that when we're talking about a commercial development like this, and it's over, I think it's over 5,000 gallons into the sanitary system, we have nothing to say about it. It's all DEP.
Mr. Resnikoff already said it in front of you.
So how that affects, you know, how we handle the infrastructure, the water going through that area, sewers, you know, the expenses running the sewer line past something that we can't make them pay for to hook up to. We need to take all that stuff into consideration. Not only do we talk about the planning, but we ought to talk about how planning impacts the taxpayers out of their pocket. Right? I know planning and zoning doesn't like to look at the monetary problem. All right, but that's the end factor in everything. Without the money, we don't do anything.
I agree that without the money, we don't do everything. I will say that if a proposal otherwise meets the regulations, it's difficult to not approve it out of concerns of some future sewer impact.
No, I agree. All I'm saying is, we need to look at it. I'm not saying
I get it.
should.
We need to look at it, and we need to make sure
control what
that,
we decide, no.
that even though agencies don't have control of things, they have knowledge of everything that's happening. Anybody else?
Just in terms of the restaurants, I mean, you showed some pictures of the, within the structure, you're going to have a detailed application for design review. But design review is going to need to know what these restaurants look like in order to be able to do the review.
So let me
You
just,
know, obviously, the national chain issue is a very real one.
so just as an example, how I might, I'm just a little concerned with the laser.
I've been here before.
This restaurant, right here, which complies with all the regulations, is I have to click, sorry, is this building right here.
Well, as I say, this will be looked at on Wednesday night. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of, I think a lot depends upon whether complying with the national logo means we want our green awning, or whether it means we want 40-foot tall golden arches with flashing lights.
Those we can't have here.
Yes, I agree with that, but here, this was an example.
Yeah.
And again, the design review, this is not the forum for that, Wednesday night is the forum for
So
that.
as I expressed, it's also our concern, because we want to have a unified look.
I have one comment, fairly minor. When we reached out to the public to address what they potentially wanted in this area, there was very high concern for Glenwood Road and possible connectivity through the back. Julie had mentioned there might be possibly an area that could connect, and perhaps if that could be highlighted and potential
I'm
trail.
not familiar with how you would do that. The pond is in the way.
On the southern portion. Julie, remember you were looking at that map you showed?
Yeah, there's the old road, we used to walk across it as kids.
You need a bridge though.
Yeah, through the bridge.
But if it was, what ideally is, if that area could be highlighted in the plans, then looking future, we'd be able to connect to Glenwood, because right now there is no accessibility to Glenwood. It's very dangerous. People are coming around that bend. You would get much more activity if people could come through Glenwood and connect through the back.
I'll be happy to discuss it with staff. I am not familiar with where that is, and I'd have to see how it looks.
It was an old wooden bridge.
Are you talking about
Guys
pedestrian
used to get
access or
timber from the
vehicle
property.
access?
Pedestrian, because there was discussion about people wanting.
There was rocks and we drove across the rocks.
Henry,
Yes.
have you thought about a consistent signage plan for the interior of the site?
For everything, yes. It's one signage. I mean, every sign isn't the same, but it's one consistent pattern.
Consistent, yeah, that's basically signage regulation.
I mean, some people want, italicized letters, some people want block letters, but everybody's got to comply with one your code and two ours. So it's pretty consistent.
Okay? You good? Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you next month to bring the application.
Thank you.